Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the Behind the Blue, a candid conversation celebrating women in law enforcement. My name is Bobby Ferguson, and I'm the Chief Production Officer at Pasadena Media, and I have the honor and privilege of moderating this discussion. Please allow me to introduce you to our dynamic group of panelists today. In fact, let's give them a round of applause for being here. So first, we have Sergeant Kim Baker. She began her career with the Pasadena Police Department in 1989 as a police explorer. In 1991, she was hired as a police cadet and became an officer in 1997. She has been blessed to work with various assignments as an officer and is currently the Pasadena Police Department Wellness Sergeant. Now, you can applause if you want. Next, we have Karen Peterson. Karen Peterson has been with the Pasadena Police Department for 37 years and currently serves as Executive Administrator. Karen started her career with the department as an emergency services operator in 1985. She has worked a variety of assignments, including records, dispatch, and technical services. She is currently in charge of the Strategic Services Division and oversees the Emergency Communications Section, Record Management Section, Property Unit, Police Fleet, and the department's technology projects. Next, we have Susanna Oscar. She is the police support assistant for the violent crime section of the police department and provides administrative support to sworn personnel, detectives, and officers. She performs a variety of records management while directing the public to appropriate resources, both internally and externally. She has worked for the city of Pasadena for the last 2 years and brings a wealth of resources from relationships fostered within the community. Lieutenant Monica Cuellar brings a wealth of experience to the Pasadena Police Department, boasting a tenure of 31 years within the organization. Throughout her career, she has undertaken diverse roles spanning the Neighborhood Crime Task Force, Traffic Division, Event Planning, Detective Section, FDO Supervisor, and Patrol. Notably, her expertise in investigative work has positioned her as a leading authority in sexual assault investigations, encompassing cases involving both adult and juvenile victims and suspects, many of which have garnered significant public attention. As the department's public information officer, Monica also brings with her years of experience in community engagement. She's especially qualified as PIO, having earned a degree in journalism and having previously worked in broadcast journalism. So welcome, everyone. So let's get started. Thanks, everyone, for being here. So my first question would be, and we'll start with Kim, what do you consider to be the most interesting part or aspect of your job?
I think the most interesting aspect of the job is the dynamic of the job. Every day we wear different hats. We change those hats, depending on the call that we're handling or the people that we're dealing with. But I think that's probably the most interesting, is that we are called to wear different hats when we deal with the community.
Hi. I think the most interesting part of our job is just the change that happens. Well, change for me in the amount of time that I've been there. Change in people, change in faces, whether it's the community or the actual employees. Because I'm running technology, it's changing all the technology that's happened over the years. So we've come quite a long way from writing pencil and paper and now on to computers. So thank you.
One of the aspects that I enjoy right now is helping not just my department, but other departments as well. I get called a lot from different areas to assist, and I'm always ready to step in. My job isn't just centered on what I do, which is helping the detectives with the paperwork. I am always ready to step in, and I love that the rest of the team and the support staff feel that they can count on me to do that.
And see, for me, I hate being last because it's all them, what they said. So, but I do love the diversity of my job. I get to do a lot of things that I never thought I would be doing. It's very challenging at times, but I learn, and I've learned that it takes me learning every day something new, because I didn't think at my age and how long I've been here I would think I would know everything by now, but I don't. So it's great. It's a great challenge. I love it. I'm constantly doing something. We're problem solving every day. So I enjoy that aspect of it.
Starting with Karen, is this the career that you saw yourself doing as a child? And how did you get into law enforcement, and why do you stay? And why have you stayed for 37 years?
So actually, no, it's not the career or the job that I even thought I would have as a child. When we would play at home, we play whatever we were working, we were always clerical because that's what my mom did. My mom was a clerical worker, so we figured, oh, that's what we're going to do, and we'd set up a phone desk and answer phones and pretend to type, have our little offices made out of blanket tent cities. So no, I did not expect to do this, but at 16, I started working for AAA, and I was a road services dispatcher. So I would take your calls for service if you were out broken down, and you would call to request a tow, and I would get that information and then dispatch a tow company. So that was kind of the foundation that brought me into the police department. I saw an ad that they were asking for emergency services operator, which when I researched, it was exactly the same thing I was doing, but kind of on a different level. So that's how I got into law enforcement. Why did I stay? Because I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. I love the community that we serve. I grew up next door in Eagle Rock, so it's super home for me. Oh,
Suzanne.
Thank you.
So the question is did you envision yourself in this career as a child?
Okay.
Why did you decide to get into law enforcement, and why do you stay?
Okay. So no, I did not, but I did on the outskirts. My dream job was to become an attorney. I've done everything but that. I went to court reporting school. I worked in law firms. I started working for the city in another branch in the health department, and when the opportunity gave to itself to come and join the police department, I ran after it. So yes and no, this is where I want to be. I think that I bring a lot of my heart to my position, and so there's more that I do above and beyond than just my work at my desk.
Same question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, it was the job that I thought I would be doing. Kind of. Because at first, I thought I was going to go into sports journalism. And then I grew up with 4 brothers, so that's why I was very tomboy when I grew up. I loved anything with sports, anything just active. So a friend of mine had said, hey, you'd be really good in the police department. And I said, I never thought of that. So I went on a ride along and, fell in love. And I said, that's what I want to do. So I was about 18 at the time. And as soon as I turned 21, I signed up.
Yes, it was. So growing up, we didn't watch a lot of TV, but when we did get TV time, it was TV shows related to like cops. So there was Chips, and I remember that there was a female officer by the name of Cindy, and I watched Chips all the time. There was Adam 12. I'm trying to think of the other one. SWAT. And then as I got a little bit older, TJ Hooker came out. That was another one. Cagney and Lacey. So I watched those, and that's I knew I wanted to do that. And I was probably maybe about 12 years old when I decided, this is what I want to do. I want to be a police officer. Born and raised in the city, I saw the police cars. I saw the officers. I saw that there were actually female officers on the force because they would be driving the cars. So yes, and I stay because I love what I do. I love serving my community. I have a lot of family in my community. I have a lot of friends that still live here. So yes, I stay because I love it and I love helping people.
Excellent. Thank you. So, as women, I personally am in a male-dominated industry in video productions, and I know I suffer from imposter syndrome quite a bit, and I know that's pretty common among women. So was there a point, and we'll start with you, Susanna, tell us about an experience where you realized, no, I'm meant to be here. I'm meant to be in law enforcement.
I'm going to defer to Monica. When I met Monica Cuellar about 5 years ago, I was doing so-called ride-alongs with her. The position that I had at that time needed a lot of police influence or police assistance, and so because of that, I started to see that there was a need for someone from the community who was community outreach based to be inside to help from the inside out. Because when I started, I was on the outside seeking help from her. And now that I'm on the inside, even though I'm not in constant contact with the people that I served before, I am still able to help them. It's just from a different perspective now. And I think developing the relationship and the trust that she gave me, because I know it's not easy to trust people, I've been able to take that and pay it forward. So I like that I was able and given that small window of opportunity to do so.
My turn. Okay, do the question again.
So tell us about an experience where you realized that, yes, you were meant to be in your position or belonged in the law enforcement field.
So it didn't happen until I was actually in detectives. I was working sexual assaults. And a young girl, she was about 9 by the time I met her, but she had been abused by someone older, an adult, and it was a very sad story. But this little girl was so articulate and just amazing little girl. So when we caught the suspect and went through the whole court system and everything, she came up to me, she wrote me a letter, beautiful letter, but she came up to me and gave me a hug and she said, you saved me and I'll never forget you. And that made me almost, cry. Well, it did make me cry. I was bawling and I was like, oh my God. So at that moment, I knew that this was my job and I wanted to foresee this and help other people and help other kids and adults find closure. And so I knew that was my purpose at that point.
I think there's been a lot of little incidents or calls where I kind of this is what I want to do. But like Lieutenant Cuellar, it happened later in my career. I was working as the Pasadena High School resource officer, and 2 young girls got into a fight over a boy. And fortunately, the moms of both little girls, they were open to mediation. So we brought the young girls in here, and sitting there and giving them, I guess, tools and trying to empower them and talk to them and tell them that, there's so much more out there, and when you have an issue, deal with it, talk it out. I mean, because they actually got into a physical fight. They were pushing each other and just trying to empower them and make them understand that this is not, as women, we shouldn't be fighting like this, right? We should be taking care of each other and holding each other up and encouraging each other. And the 2 moms were able to talk to their daughters, and this mediation, we didn't know if we were going to have to make an arrest. But the mediation was so positive for both the young ladies and the moms. I'm like, this is it. This is why I do my job. And maybe a year or 2 later, I was working at the turkey tussle at the Rose Bowl, and one of the young ladies came up, and she was now in the military, and she came up, and just like Lieutenant Cuellar, these moments, you're like, this is why I do what I do, right? And she's like, I'm so grateful and thankful that you talked to me, because I realized that there's more than, I'm strong and I can do this. But it was so empowering, and just to see this young lady grow up to becoming this young, strong woman that was able to take control of it. And she's like, you're right. Everything you told me, at first I didn't want to listen to you, but I heard what you were saying, and it's changed my life. And that was just so amazing. I felt so good, and I felt great. And even the other young lady, when she walked out of the office that day, even she was like, thank you for opening my eyes. So, I mean, that's why we do it,
I have so many layers for this answer. Well, first, yes, I have complete issues with imposter. Yes, complete. I'm female. I'm in a male-dominated world. Or profession, I should say. It's getting better, though. Yeah. So, thank you. I'm a civilian in a otherwise sworn environment. I'm a female, and I'm in management. So, and I'm short. So many layers. All those things, you struggle with daily, just to make sure that you are there doing the right job, doing what you're supposed to be doing. And when I knew that I was in the right position was when I was finally, I think I was a supervisor at this point. It was mentoring my employees and watching them grow from cadets watching them grow from young dispatchers and become supervisors and move on to manager positions, and just when they came back and thanked me and said that I influenced them, that I gave them the courage to take that next step, to move on, to go to another agency, to grow, that's when I knew I was in the right position. Thank you.
It is always powerful when you see your experience brought down to the next generation. I've definitely had that happen with interns before too, and it's just like, oh, I have something to say and they want to listen, and it's actually helpful. So starting next question with Monica. So bad days happen at many jobs, but a bad day in law enforcement may be a different situation. So could you all, and this is a question for everyone, tell us about one of your most challenging days and how you've moved on or how you moved on from it?
God, there's been a lot of challenging days, but I think one that I can think of happened a while back. It was a crash, and it was over by Chandler School, and it killed a few people, and it was so devastating. But when I got there, you don't think about those things. When you get there, you want to help, and you want to make sure, secure the scene and so forth and so on. And at the time, I had a 2-year-old daughter, my oldest, who's 27 now, by the way. So she was 2 years old, and I was a single mom at the time. So when I got there, it was just a devastating scene. And then afterwards, there was a 2-year-old little girl that was killed. And I didn't think about it, like I said, and it wasn't until I got home, I was like, oh my gosh, that could have been my little girl. I remember just hugging her, and she's like, what's wrong? Because I was hugging her, and I was like, gosh, my gosh, and just feeling so emotional over it. And I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can face this and do this all the time, day after day, so seeing these things are so traumatic. But I really thought about it and prayed about it, and that was probably one of the biggest challenges of going back. We end up, for our department, we do talk to people, to a counselor, and we did a group debrief, which helped a lot because we all talked about it, men and women, and so it was good to hear other people's point of views. And at that point, I was like, okay, got to get back into the job, and all right, well, I'm ready for the next challenge. But it's very challenging to have to set your mind to those things that you're going to face every day, so those tragedies. But as long as you can come out and think about them and process them the proper way, anyone, like I said, any of these women have dealt with tragedy in their lives, I'm sure. It's just how you deal with it and how you process it. And that was probably one of the biggest challenges, though, in my career.
We'll just actually make it easier. So Susanna, same question for you.
So my challenges are nothing like the sworn, but I did recently just have one. And it had to do with the technology. It had to do with things that I was inputting that were going to the courts, and somewhere along the way, it was incorrect. And so I was receiving emails and I was receiving phone calls, and I learned early in life that I am the first person to admit mistakes. And so I had no answer because I wasn't clear on what could have gone wrong. But I explained to the DAs that were calling me that it was probably human error and it was probably on me. And that seemed to deflate the situation because it was so big that, there was a wrong time and a wrong date. But taking ownership of it was something that, I'm sure it was me. Turns out it wasn't me. It was a glitch. But I had no problem taking ownership of that. And I think that's something that life teaches you. And I've brought all my life lessons with me. So I figured I wasn't going to say I don't know what happened or not take responsibility. And in taking responsibility, it diffused everything. Everything was resolved. But then I got to the bottom of it, and it turns out it really wasn't me.
We'll talk about that glitch. Yeah. We'll fix that glitch. Those are my challenges when processes don't work. So every day is a challenge, whether it's a car not being available or a police car not working or not having all the items in it that the officer needs to be out in the field. Also, my tragedies are not their daily tragedies or their experiences during the workday. My challenges are all about the support and the support for the officers that are out in the field. So how do I get through that? We just make sure that things work and keep up on follow-up and find the people, what's going on, what's wrong, and make sure that they contact me so we can get that, keep going. But yeah, those are my everyday challenges.
Wow, there's so many challenges. Like Lieutenant had mentioned, some of the things that we see out there, from the really horrible traffic accidents to the suicides to a baby not breathing call or an officer being in a fight. There are so many challenges, and I mean, I think the first challenge probably started for me was when I became a police officer the first day of the police academy. I'm little, we're little people, we're little, and everyone's looking at you because they're expecting you to fail. They're expecting you not to make it. Instead of being there to inspire you, they're there to yell at you and scream at you, and I get the reasons why they do that. But just the challenge of, I'm a pretty fun and nice person, and I like to help people out. And to go to this first day and just feel I don't know if I'm going to make this, and I'm pretty positive, and I was I don't know if I'm going to make this day. And so I'm if I can just get through this first day, I can probably get through the next couple days. And then before I knew it, I was graduating. But I think that was my first challenge, was starting that academy. I cut all my hair, so I had a really short little haircut. I looked like a little boy, and I was told through the whole academy I looked like a little boy. And then just being little, jumping over the wall and going over the fence, everybody's watching. Everybody's watching. Nobody's watching anyone else, but they're watching me because I'm so little. But that was probably the first challenge, and then there's been so many after that. And we just, when those challenges come up, I just pray and just hope my faith can get me through it, because I need to be strong to be there for everyone else.
A lot of evidence of strength among women here. So the last question right now I have for everyone is, well, actually, no, one more, I'm sorry. As a female in the law enforcement field, what has been the most significant barrier in your career?
Wow. I mean, I don't want to say it was being a female, because I've had a lot of help along the way from the male counterparts also. Being an explorer, being a cadet, being an officer, now being a sergeant. Probably the biggest barrier is sometimes when you want to help someone and they don't want your help. I think that's probably the biggest barrier for me, because I'm a fixer. I want to fix everything, and that comes from the way I was brought up, the way I raised my son, who's a teenager, the way I interact with my husband. I want to fix things, and I think that is probably the biggest barrier, is just trying to help somebody else and they don't want the help, or they don't want fixing, or maybe I just can't fix it. I think that's a huge barrier for me.
What was the question exactly?
As a female in the law enforcement field, what has been the most significant barrier in your career?
Again, another layered, so many layers on this one. All the same answers in the law enforcement field. But I think the hardest part for any of us, because I think we're all fixers here, we all are hard chargers and doing what we do, the biggest barrier is sometimes getting out of our own way and allowing things to happen, or allowing that we can't control what the outcome is going to be. And that's not just in law enforcement, that's just in life, right? And I think that's one of the things that resonates with me most.
This is a trick question because I haven't been doing this long enough, but one of the barriers that I do have for me personally right now is not having all the answers, and that's my own barrier. I like to critically think things out, so I answer a lot of phone calls, and it always starts with, I'm not sure if I'm talking to the right person, but... So I have to listen, and I'm going to say it's a 50-50 draw for me with every phone call that I get. I may have the answer, I may not, but I do my best to try and seek out an answer. And I always tell them that I'm going to get them an answer. It may not be the answer that they're looking for, they want, or that they need, but I at least try to give them some direction. So right now, not having all the answers of where they should be directed or what they should or shouldn't do is one of my biggest barriers, but I'm breaking it down.
All right, so I look at it this way. Being a female in law enforcement is like being a female in a football team. So it's constant, like, trying to prove yourself, almost, you know. It's the imposter thing, but it's something that it's within you. Like, I know I can do anything that any other guy can do in the job, but I think it's a matter of people believing in you and you being confident about doing it. So there's been a lot of those doubtful times when I got promoted to a sergeant, and then I was like thrown out into a patrol, and now you got to supervise 6 people, and it's like, oh shoot. And a lot of these things, sometimes the incidents I never even dealt with, so I got to think about this. And I found that my barrier is, like Karen said, it's myself. Instead of me like trying to figure out being somebody else, I needed to just be myself. And being myself, I was able to okay, I can learn this. I can ask other people. And then I realized, oh my God, my counterparts don't even know what to do in this situation. So I'm like, okay, I got this. So my own barrier was me. The barrier was me. So I've learned along the way to just be open to new ideas, to learn, to constantly learn. If I don't know something, go look it up, go find out what the answer is. So that's probably the biggest barrier.
How much of your career engages your natural abilities and how much is learned from experience?
Wow. Okay. Well, let's see. Starting as a dispatcher and taking the phone calls and helping people, there's a lot of nurturing there, and I'm a nurturer by nature. So that came into play quite a bit. But the tasks themselves, the order in which you have to do things, the processes that you have to learn or you have to create, those were all learned and part of the job. So it's 50-50, how much is my natural, how much is me, and how much is actually learned. But I think most of the things that we learned are learned processes and learned tasks or things that we create to get that job done.
Susanna.
So again, I get a lot of phone calls. I also find out daily what's gone on in the city. And I'm just going to give an example that happened just on Thursday. I used to be a case manager out in the city working with the police department before I started working in the police department. And somebody that I believed in and that I worked with happened to be brought in. So I called the jail, and this is not part of my job, but part of who I am. I asked if she was still down and holding and if I could come down to see her. So not part of my job description, but it wasn't something that I was going to let go. So I made my way down there, and we talked for a long time, and she felt bad and felt that she disappointed me. And I said, this isn't a disappointment appointment for me. I'm just here to let you know that even though I'm not hands-on with you anymore, I'm still here. And it wasn't a coincidence that your name popped up, and I could have just ignored it, but that's not who I am. So I made it a point to go down and try to make a difference. So that was bringing part of who I am and part of my job, and them not just colliding but blending. And so I try to do a lot of that with the position that I am, not just do what I'm supposed to do or expected to do. I try to take it above and beyond when a situation presents itself. And I thank my upbringing as well as my work experience for those opportunities.
That's a good answer. Thank you. So I think the same. I think it's 50-50. I think it's part of how I grew up and just who I am. So by nature, I am a servant leader, I think, because I like to make sure people are okay. I like to include everybody. I don't like to let people feel like they're left out of anything. So I'm very much a nurturer and so forth. So I think just that part of me and having this type of job, it was great because I was able to implement all those types of styles I have into my job, and it's worked. So that's why I've been here so long.
Pretty much what Karen and Lieutenant said, the 50-50. I'm a nurturer. I'm the oldest of 3. So being the oldest, I always wanted to kind of maybe, well, they probably wouldn't agree, but I was, like the little mom. I wanted to always make sure that they were okay. And so I carried that into law enforcement. And as I went to different sections, I carried that with me to take care of my coworkers or the officers I work with, sworn and civilian, and then as a sergeant now, definitely, because you're like they look up to you. You have to mentor them, and there's discipline as a supervisor. And a little funny story. There was an A team, 2 officers in a car, and they're at the gas pumps the other day. I was patrol before I became a wellness sergeant. And I was pumping gas in my car, and they were pumping gas in their car. And I was talking to one of them, and he turned around and he said something to me, and he goes, "Right, Mom?" And I looked around, and I thought, oh my goodness. He's like, "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to call you Mom." But he's like, no. And he's like, and he was trying to explain, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, but like, you're like a mom. Like, you nurture us, you take care of us, and we know that, you're going to discipline us if need be, but you always take care of us, and you always help us out. So I think all of us, I think we're all nurturers, and we all want to take care of them. But yes, I got called Mom.
Welcome to the club.
There's worse things to be called, right?
It's actually sweet.
Oh. So these next couple of questions are actually for each individual. So I'll ask this question and go over to Monica, and then I'll come over to you, so you don't have to keep don't have to go back and forth. So Monica, since you're the PIO, how do you think more women joining law enforcement will help increase community outreach and transparency?
A fun fact, we all should know that there's more women in the United States than there are men. So I look at it as being able for the community to see women in uniform and to be able to request a female, or let's say, for example, let me give you an example. When I work sex crimes, especially, a lot of times the victims requested females rather than males because they feel more comfortable, and it's understandable. So right now we're at 36 females in our department out of roughly 300 sworn. Or no, I'm sorry, sworn is like what, 2 something? 245. So 36 of us are female. So it's not a lot. It's only roughly about, 14%, maybe less. So it's important that we do have those females in there, and I think it would help especially with the community, because they see that. In fact, like we were talking about, Sergeant Baker and I were talking about earlier, was that people request for females. And whenever I'm riding with a female, they're all, yeah, all right, good, go for your females. And, we get that a lot. So it's good. I think it's good for the community because they see that. And women, and if you read on the internet, it'll tell you, in books, it'll tell you that people tend to believe women, that they're more honest and more transparent. So I think that would help too. So having more females, it's very hard because we've been out there recruiting, and it takes a certain female to want to do this job. It's a certain type of female. So if we can start early enough to to nurture those young girls that want. Oh, in fact, you know what? Let me tell you a story real quick. I was at the New Year's after the post parade, and a little girl, probably like 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7, and she came up. She's all, excuse me, and we looked over, and she's like, I just want to tell you, I want to be like you when I grow up. I was like, oh, okay, well, do it. I'm always the stickers. So that's where we need to start. The young females that want to, like I was and like Kim was, that we want to become cops. And that's important to keep nurturing that, because it is a great, great career. Of course we have ups and downs, but overall this career has been a blessing. And I've learned so much, and I'm so appreciative every day I work at the department, and even the bad days, I learn from those. So I think it's important that we try to recruit more women. There is an initiative to try to get 30 by 2030, 30%. I think we're far off, but I think if we start with the young ones and start working that way, and we get in there in the schools and show that how women cops are and who women cops are, and just talk about our lives, that I think we'll have more, responses later on in life.
Yeah, because I believe in the 1970s it was 3%. Now it's hovering around 13%. And it's a 30 by 30. So here's hoping.
Yes.
So
that's a long shot, but I think at least we can get into the 20s. I think.
Susanna, so who inspires you, or who do you consider as a mentor, and why?
I think the answer is very obvious. It's Lieutenant Cuellar. Like I said, so I'm going to tell our story, our beginning.
Our story. I love our story.
Our story?
I said I love our story.
Oh, our story's beautiful. So I used to work with the homeless and did a lot of outreach. And like I said, I was a case manager. So every event, every community outreach, anything that had to do with pulling people and resources together, I was there. So Monica, we were constantly bumping into each other, and there were not that many Latinas at those meetings. It was a very male-dominant environment that I was entering. So she started to introduce me to people, and I started to just build connection and connection and connection. Anybody she spoke to, I got to speak to, or the introductions were made, and she was introducing me as the program manager for said place that I was at. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm just a regular worker bee. And she said, no, you're not. Stop being so humble. So she didn't believe me for a long time until she finally realized that it was true. But from there, I appreciated any and everything above and beyond. She goes above and beyond, not just for the people that she works with, but for the community. And so I wanted to be a little bit like Monica, so I started to mimic what she did, to the point that I was introducing her to people because there was connections that she hadn't made. So I took that from her and made it my own. And I think that where I am and who I'm becoming, I will always revert back to where credit's deserved, and it's to Lieutenant Cuellar.
Thank you.
So Karen, what are some common misconceptions people have about law enforcement, and how can we combat these misconceptions and communicate more effectively?
So my observations over the last less than 40 years, sounds so long, have been that there's still the misconception that it's an us versus them mentality when the police are coming out for any call for service, whether we were called out by that resident or we were called out by that community member. My observation is that there is always that us versus them, and there's just a divide. And I know we've had many tries and have made strides in communicating and educating, and I think that we still need to continue to do that. People are asking for lots of transparency, and that is completely understandable, and police departments are moving to be more transparent. But there are certain things that we just cannot give. I mean, it's not like the movies, and I think that's where we kind of get hung up. As people look at TV or movies and how they think that's how they think all police departments are going to be, or that's how they think they're handling all cases, and that all that information should be available to anybody, and it's not. There are some things we need to keep private until there's convictions or until that case is closed, and there's protections of victims that we need to take care of. But I think that's always going to be an issue. It's been an issue since I've been here, and I think it'll continue. But I just think we need to continue to communicate openly that we need to be active listening on both sides, that it has to happen on both sides of that conversation, that it's not going to be just a one-sided conversation for only one person to be active listening.
Kim, what has been the most rewarding aspect of your career, and why?
The feeling that I know I've made a difference. That is probably the most rewarding aspect of my career. And it could be from making a little small difference to making a huge difference. Knowing that or at least I've tried to make a difference, I think that's rewarding. Having someone say, hey, you've made a difference, you've helped me out today, or you've given me the tools I need to do whatever I need to do. And that goes with my coworkers and with the community. Having that feeling is amazing. It is why I do the job. It is why I get up every day and put on this uniform to go do the job, knowing that I'm helping somebody. That is rewarding. I think I've always wanted to be work in public service, and like Lieutenant mentioned, I mean, we have this awesome job. Like, it's fun, and there are some dark days. There are days that, I'll go home and I'll tell my husband, I need a moment. And even those calls, I know I've done something. If it's holding somebody's hand or praying with somebody, or there's people that just want to give us a hug sometimes, or taking that child who was being victimized out of that home or that atmosphere or that environment, or just reminding somebody that it's going to be okay, right? And that we're here for you. You call 911, we'll come, we do come. But I think that's just the biggest thing, knowing that I've made a difference, and that feels good. That makes me get up every day to do this job.
So we have time for 2 more questions for everyone. We'll see if we have a little bit more time, if you want some more. So, and Kim, we'll start with you again. What is the biggest challenge in the field of law enforcement at the moment?
Wow, there's a lot, but I think for us, I will say it's a big challenge. Recruitment and retention. I mean, that's it. Recruiting and hiring and keeping the officers here. And I actually think it's across the board, even on the civilian side, the non-sworn side, and finding good people, or finding people that want to do this job. It is not what you see in the movies. It's not what you see on TV. And I realized that once I became a police officer. I think most of the time we are writing paper, right? We're not chasing bad guys all day. We write a lot of paper. So I think finding applicants that want to do the job, number one, and that have the capability and capacity to do the job. Because there are a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different hats that we wear. Every call is different. There is no such thing as a routine traffic stop or the routine call. Every call is different. So I think finding the people that want to do this, and you have to really want to do this. It has to be in your heart. It has to be in your soul. And then keeping them here to work for this department. This is a great department to work for. I mean, I've been here since I was 16 and a half years old, and I'm like 35 now. 35, 40 maybe. So I think that's just a biggest thing, and I think it's a challenge for most police departments, if not all of them.
Agreed. That is one of the biggest challenges, is recruitment and retainment of personnel. But along with that comes technology, and not just teaching it, but getting it and getting people to change to it, and actually bringing it into the department. And which technology do we bring? There's a lot out there. There's a lot of different products that are out there that can help us do our job better, and then it's getting them to all collaborate together. So that's fun. But that's one of my biggest challenges, and I see that across the board.
So one of the biggest challenges that I've encountered is the people that I come across in the community who forget that all the sworn and those inside are still people. Once the uniform is off, my job, as far as the challenge goes, is to remind them that they're still somebody's spouse, somebody's child, somebody's special person. And I think people forget that when they think of law enforcement. And so I know I'm only one person, but I'm trying to change the tide when I can, to let people know that the challenges that they face every day, I only know a small snapshot of it right now, but it's a lot. It's a tremendous amount of weight that they carry because they feel responsible and because they're making a difference. And I think if people would stop just seeing the badge or the uniform and take a minute to remember that they're people first and foremost, I think things would be a lot different in the community.
Okay, on the darker side, I think a lot of the newer cops, not all of them, but there's some really good new younger officers. But I think what they're lacking is emotional intelligence. So a lot of them will. I think it's because of technology we have. They're so used to texting everybody instead of calling them or talking to them face to face. So that art has been lost a little. So I think it's on us to teach them to, okay, no, that's not how you would handle a call. You got to call them, talk to them, see what they say. Did you ask that person, whatever? So a lot of that is kind of lost in the mix. But we have some really good sergeants that are out there trying to teach the younger ones, this is how you handle calls. So I think that's kind of, that would be mine, emotional intelligence.
We're almost to 4 o'clock, so the last question I have, I might have one more fun one, is what advice would you give to those in our audience or really out in the world who are currently in police officer positions or aspiring to be a police officer?
I would tell those to know your why. Why are you doing this? Know your why, know why you do this, and to stay focused, because this job is hard, but it's rewarding and it's fun, and you can't lose focus. You can't lose focus to why you're doing the job and who you're serving. So, and that goes from the young people who want to become police officers. If it's your why is to become a police officer, you need to start focusing before you go to the police academy. In fact, you need to start focusing even before you put in your application. You need to focus on what your goal is and what you want to do. When you go through the academy, you need to focus on the academy. When you become a police officer, you need to focus on why you're an officer. I would say the biggest thing is just know your why and carry that with you and stay as focused as possible. And find a mentor, find support, because it's out there. I can say all 4 of us on this panel, we are there to support you and others that want to go into law enforcement, if it's a sworn position or a non-sworn position, but we're here. But definitely know your why.
I would say, even starting way before that, make good choices. Make good choices throughout life, because anything that you're posting or anything that you're putting out on social media, out on the internet, will follow you, and your background package needs to be completed before you could even start the academy, right? So you want to make sure that you're making good choices through life, and that's for either sworn or the civilians. And for anyone who wants to be in law enforcement but not necessarily an officer, there are so many avenues available within police agencies or government agencies that are civilians, and you don't have to be sworn to be here. I'm on command staff. I'm a member of command staff. I'm a civilian. I rose through the ranks on the civilian side, and we haven't had a civilian on command staff for 30 years. Has it been that long? Yeah, I think the last one left in the early 2000s, and we stopped for a long time. So, being given that opportunity, I'm blessed to have this opportunity, and I'm very happy to be here.
She's a great commander.
Oh, thank you.
Just answer the question.
I'm just going to piggyback off of your answer. They really do deep dives into your background. So yes, make good choices.
Having just had that done.
Yes, having just had that done. So I don't have more to add to that, but I will share my story. While they were doing my background check, one of the detectives called me and said, "Do you remember going to court in West Covina?" And I have a docket number, and I said, "I have zero recollection of that." So it became back and forth. So I said, "If you can remind me of what it is." So they put me on hold, and they came back and they told me, "You went to court because you didn't pay your dog licensing and you had to pay a fine." And I said, "Well, I can assure you that if that's what they said I did, then I did, but I don't ever remember setting foot in a West Covina court. So he did a little bit more, and it was just a paper trail from the dog pound that had sent my information over there. So when she says to make good choices, whatever choice you make sure you remember, because I was put on the line that, I wasn't being completely transparent and honest, but I had zero recollection of ever being fined or having to go to court to pay for a dog license.
This message is supported by every humane society.
That is funny. Okay, so then I'll give advice to the person that's already in law enforcement. I would say be confident in your job and look for that mentor. There's so much wealth of information that you can get from people. Don't be afraid to go up to somebody that's been there for quite a while and ask them, hey, can you give me some advice on this or that? I think it's important to, for that person to also seek out advice.
The very last question, and a very important question. What is the superior donut?
Like the company or the...
It could be the type. It could be here in Pasadena. It could be a place. It could be I'm glazed or cake with chocolate sprinkles.
For the longest time, I never ate a donut in uniform. For the longest time, and if I did go into a donut shop, because we do, there's a few that, well, actually, 2 of them I think open 24/7 here in Pasadena. So, you walk in and you talk to them, and you don't want to leave empty-handed. So I would buy a bagel. I was like, I'm not going to buy a donut, right? But I've had a few, but the best is definitely an apple fritter. That is definitely the best. Warmed up a little bit with a little bit either coffee or milk, but an apple fritter.
Good choice.
I hear that a lot, that people will not, well, yeah, it's good, but that officers will refuse to have a donut in uniform because they just don't want the stigmatism, or they don't want that, that stereotype. Give it to me on the down low. Okay. But for me, I'm a big kid. I like sprinkles. I like cake, donuts, and I love chocolate. So any of those together.
Well, being the newest civilian on this panel up here, I have no qualms in sharing. I do not like donuts. I do not like sweets.
She doesn't like sweets.
I don't like sweets. That's part of my background. But what I do like are French fries. So if you want to know my favorite French fries right now, it has to be Tops chili cheese fries.
That's good. Oh, sorry. Maple bacon. That's all. Enough said.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we would like to thank the Pasadena Police Department, the Pasadena Public Library, and absolutely these panelists who were just so wonderful and candid. So can we give them a round of applause? Is there someone who would like to answer that?
I think there's fear every day we put this uniform on. And that's maybe why we are on. I mean, that probably keeps us alive, right? Knowing that there's a little bit of fear and being aware of our situation and not being complacent, but using your words. Like, it's amazing, and I think as females, we do a really good job with that. If I'm dealing with somebody who's a lot bigger and stronger than me, I'm going to use my words, right? And I will say, I think it's probably always worked, right? I mean, pretty much. So using those words and not challenging people, you have to be confident, and you have to show respect. But I think the biggest thing is just using your words. I mean, I know that sounds like the mom in me, because I tell my son that all the time. Use your words, right? But I think that's a lot of it. And as a not just as a sergeant, but when I was a cadet and then a new officer and then working up the rank, I tell the younger officers, like, open your ears, listen, and use your words, right? I mean, because maybe that one person is trying to send a message and they don't know how to. So just, open your ears and then use, pick your battles. Pick your battles when you're out there.
So when you are done with your program with the FTO, you go LCAR status, that's what they call it. FTO's field training officer. So when you're done with, with the field training officer program, then you go ALCAR status, so you're by yourself. So my very first day, I was like, yes, okay. It was at night, I worked Graves. So I was driving on green, and I see someone coming the opposite way, and I'm all, wait, green's a one-way, that's wrong. All right, my very first traffic stop, so here I am by myself. So I pull the guy over. I could see that he's a male. I could see him in the front. So he pulls over, and then immediately I see his hand go like this to someone in the front. So I saw his hand do a movement. So I'm like, red flag. So then all of a sudden he pops out of the car, red flag. So I'm telling the dispatcher, hey, this is the license plate, blah, blah. I'm trying to feed her as much information as I can. And then he steps out of the car. He's like 6'2", huge guy. I'm like, oh, great. This is going to be what's happening. So he goes to say, hey, what's wrong? What's wrong, sweetie? What's wrong? And he calls me that. I was like, why is he calling me that? Okay, but keep calm. Keep calm. All right, so he's coming towards me. I said, hey, I just want to make sure you're okay. You're driving down the street the wrong way. He's like, oh, I didn't realize that. But then I could smell some alcohol in his breath. And so I said, hey, you know what? You don't mind, and I don't know how I did this, but I said, you don't mind if I just do some tests on you, and I'm going to let you go. And he said, okay. And then so he turned around. So he wanted me to keep focused on him, not the car. So at the same time, I can hear my coworkers coming with lights and siren. So I'm like, okay, all I have to do is just get him secured. So I luckily got handcuffs on him and had him sit down. Next thing I know, all my partners were there, and he's like, my sergeant's like, why'd you put him in handcuffs by yourself? I'll explain it later, okay? Can we just, he did something. He did a movement to the person in front of the car. I didn't know who it was, a male or female. Ends up being a female. So the whole story, long story short, he was an escapee from Sacramento jail. He picked up a prostitute, and he had a gun. He had stuck the gun under her thigh, and she was in the front going, don't shoot me, don't shoot me. There's a gun under my thigh. So, and then that was the whole story. And then he ends up, and then the car was stolen. So that was the whole thing. And so I was like, this is my very first day being I was like, I don't know, do it. So it was great. So that fear factor, yeah, it's in you, but then you just have to dial it in. You have to focus. Okay, I got to make sure that he doesn't see the fear in my eyes or anywhere, So, I was faking it the whole time. I was scared as heck. So, but I made it.
Well, I admire all of you guys.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I wouldn't want to do it.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the question. All right, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.